Picture a palace, not a house, a palace, with marble bathtubs and gold-plated door handles and a French chef and fresh-cut roses in every room, every single morning. Now cut that palace loose from the land and float it. Put 240 feet of black steel hull under it. Drive it with coal shovelled by men you will never see, and fill the water around it with the richest human beings who have ever lived. Add a piano bolted to the floor of a mahogany saloon. Add a wine cellar that rides 6 feet above the Atlantic. Add 58 crewmen packed into the bow like cartridges in a box, and one stoker feeding a furnace in a room where the thermometer reads 120 degrees, while a lady overhead complains that her iced consommé has gone tepid. That's a Gilded Age steam yacht, the most beautiful object of its century and the most dishonest. A thing built so that the 1/10 of it that showed above the waterline could pretend the other 9/10 didn't exist. A place where you could watch a man light his cigar with $1 worth of imported match flare in the evening, on a deck scrubbed at dawn by a boy paid $1 a day. We're going back there tonight. Not as guests. Guests never saw the real ship. We're going aboard the way almost everyone actually went aboard. Through the crew hatch, in a starched white jacket carrying somebody else's breakfast. One season, one person, everything he would have seen, smelled, heard, polished, and survived. One honest thing before we step on deck, because this channel keeps its books clean. The great yachts in this story are real. Mr. Morgan's Corsair, Mr. Astor's Nourmahal, Mr. Gould's Atalanta, all documented down to their dinner services. The races are real, the dates are real, the prices are real, and I'll give them to you straight. But the yacht I'm going to put you on, the Ondine, you will not find in any registry, because I stitched her together out of those documented giants, plank by plank, so that no living family's grandfather has to answer for what we see below her decks. And the eyes I'm lending you tonight, the Stewards' eyes, are borrowed eyes, composite eyes, made from the thousands of crew names that survive in the ledgers with no faces attached. The rooms are true, the wages are true, the heat in the stokehold is true, the boy is every boy who ever held the tray. So, I make these history stories, and honestly I still can't tell whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just a very calm sort of weirdie who likes drifting off to the exact tonnage of coal it took to keep a millionaire's bathwater warm in the middle of the ocean. Either way, subscribe if you feel like it. Get comfortable. Here we go. Your knees know what time it is before your mind does. 4:30 in the morning, and your knees are 2 flat aches on wet teak, and your hands are pushing a block of sandstone in slow circles through a slurry of salt water and grit, and somewhere behind you, in the dark, another block is making the same sound yours makes. Shh. Stone on wood, wood going pale under the stone over and over, the whole length of a deck you cannot see the end of, because the mist has taken the end of it. Newport Harbour, first week of July, 1895, and the fog lies on the water like a second sea. You can hear the harbour before you can see it. A bellboy somewhere off Goat Island, tolling to itself with no rhythm at all. The dip of an oar, a rooster ashore, faint and ridiculous. And under everything so constant you stopped hearing it weeks ago until a moment like this brings it back. The low breath of the boilers below you, banked but never dead, because a great steam yacht is never allowed to go entirely to sleep. Then the smell finds you, the way it does every morning in layers. Wet salt first, off the stone and off the fog, then coal smoke, drifting flat along the water from your own funnel and from a dozen other funnels you can't see. Then linseed oil and varnish, sweet and heavy. rising off acres of bright work as the dew sits on it, and underneath it all, faint but permanent, the smell of below decks, bilge water, brass polish, yesterday's mutton, and 58 men who share 4 wash basins, including you. You shift your knees on the folded scrap of canvas that is the only mercy in this job, and keep the stone moving. The big holy stones are worked with a broom handle, standing up, but the edges and corners of the deck want the small stones, and the small stones are worked by hand kneeling, which is why sailors have called them prayer books for 100 years. The little ones, the ones for the tightest corners, they call Bibles. You are, at this moment, on your knees at the edge of a Millionaire's promenade deck reading the Bible. Nobody aboard finds this funny anymore except you, and you only on good mornings. This has to be finished, dried, and flawless before 7. Not because the deck is dirty. The deck is never dirty. It has to be done because when the owner comes up the companionway in his white shoes after 8, the teak must be the colour of cream and soft as a scrubbed table, and it must look as if it simply grows that way. That's the whole law of your working life, and you learned it in your first week. Everything aboard this ship must look effortless, and therefore all the effort must be invisible, and therefore you must be invisible while you make it. A guest who sees the work has seen a flaw. You are, professionally, a thing that is not seen. Your name is Daniel Kerrigan. You're 19 years old. Your father tongs oysters out of the Great South Bay off Long Island, and until this spring so did you. And your hands still carry the oysterman's calluses under the new blisters the Holy Stone has given you. You came aboard in April with 1 canvas bag, 1 good pair of boots, and a letter from a yacht club steward in Greenport who owed your father a favour, and you signed articles for the season at $25 a month, plus your keep, plus a uniform you must pay for out of the first wages if you lose or ruin it. Back home, everyone said a season in yachts would either make you soft or make you rich. 3 months in, you can report that it has done neither. It has made you quiet, quick, and very good at walking on your toes. The ship under your knees is the steam yacht Ondine, and there are perhaps a dozen vessels on this coast in her class and no more. 241 feet from her clipper bow to the gilded scrollwork on her stern. You know the figure exactly because guests ask it, and a steward must have it ready. With a black hull, 2 raked masts, a single buff funnel, and below her waterline the machinery and the men that nobody asks about at all. She was built on the Delaware 5 years ago for a little under $500,000, which is a number you genuinely could not make mean anything until Charlie worked it out for you one night in the glory hole. At your wages, $25 a month, you would need to work every month for 1,600 years to buy her. Then he rolled over in his bunk and went to sleep, and you lay there doing the sum again, hoping it would come out different. It doesn't come out different. Her name, one of the gentlemen guests told a lady at dinner while you were pouring, comes out of an old European story. An Ondine is a water spirit, a woman of the rivers, beautiful and soulless. The lady said how lovely. You stood behind her chair with the bottle wrapped in a napkin and thought about the stokehold, and privately agreed with the name more than either of them knew. The word yacht itself, while we're at it, is Dutch, jacht from jagen, to hunt. A jacked ship was a fast little ship for chasing pirates. That's already an old joke by 1895. Nothing on this coast hunts anything anymore except invitations. Somewhere forward, a hatch cover comes off with a rubber-lipped thump, and the day's first heat rolls up out of the fiddly grating as the black gang below begins to bring the banked fires forward. You feel it cross your wet hands like something alive escaping, down there. 4 decks under the teak you are whitening. Men you mess with every day are already stripped to flannel and sweat rags, and the temperature around them is climbing through 90 on its way to worse, and it is 4:30 in the morning in the coolest week Newport has had all summer. Remember that heat. It's under everything in this story. The way it was under everything on the real ships. Under the marble, under the roses, under the piano. The teak is the lid. You'll hear a man say that properly before this night is over. A man with burn scars up both forearms, and he says it better than I ever could. Shh. Shh. You work your way aft, corner by corner, past the deck house with its beveled glass windows blinded by drawn silk, past the coiled fall of the accommodation ladder, past the little brass swivel gun on the after rail that exists to fire salutes and has never in its life been aimed at anything. The fog begins very slightly to pale, too. Somewhere to the east, over Middletown's farms, the sun is up and working. In an hour the mist will lift off the anchorage all at once, the way a sheet comes off a chandelier, and it will show you the summer fleet of the New York Yacht Club riding at anchor in the best harbour in America. Black hulls, white hulls, raked funnels, gilt trail boards, ensigns stirring. The most expensive congregation of private property assembled anywhere on earth in 1895. And every one of those beautiful sleeping ships has a boy like you on his knees at the edge of the deck right now in the wet reading the Bible. 6 bells. Somewhere in the fog, faint, another ship's bell answers, and then a third, the sound hopping from hull to hull across the water. 5 o'clock. The chief steward will be turning out. You have the after deck still to finish, and then the brass, and the brass never ends, they say. And you now believe that a yacht this size carries more polished brass than a cathedral carries candlesticks. You bear down on the stone, because here is the thing you already understand about this floating world 3 months in, the thing this whole night is really about. The owner's family and their guests, the people this ship exists for, they will sleep another 3 hours. When they wake, they will find hot, fresh water in the marble bathrooms, roses newly cut in the vases, breakfast laid under silver on the after deck, the teak pale, the brass blazing, the ship immaculate, and not one single human being visibly doing anything. As far as they will ever see, the Ondine simply is this way, always, by nature, the way a swan is white. You are what the swan is doing under the water, and you're late, by the standard of this ship, at 5 in the morning. Having been at work since 4, you're already running behind. By 5:30 the after deck is done and drying, and you go below the way you always go below, fast, quiet, and through the right door. There are 2 circulatory systems on this ship, and they do not mix. The owner's stairways are mahogany, carpeted, lit by silver-plated lamps. Yours are steel, painted, and smell of soup. A steward caught using the guest companion way without a tray in his hands and a reason in his mouth doesn't get lecture. He gets put ashore at the next anchorage with his bag and half a month's pay, and everyone knows a man it happened to, and nobody remembers his name anymore, which is the real lesson. The crew's quarters are all the way forward, jammed into the narrowing bow where the hull sides come together like the covers of a closing book. The forecastle for the deckhands, a separate den for the black gang, and the steward's glory hole, which is what the sea has always called the place where the servants sleep, and nobody aboard can tell you whether the joke is on the glory or on the hole. Yours holds 8 men in 8 bunks in a space the size of the owner's smallest bathroom. That is not a figure of speech. Charlie stepped it off once with his feet. heel to toe, solemn as a surveyor, while you all watched from your bunks, 11 feet by 9. Then he did the owner's bathroom the next morning while drawing the bath, same feet, same method. 12 by 10, and the tub is marble carved out of one block, and the taps on it are gold plate, and there are 3 kinds of water: fresh hot, fresh cold, and salt, because a saltwater bath is held to be bracing. And when I say the crew is packed in, I need you to understand what that means on a yacht in 1895. This isn't a shared cabin. This is 58 men. Deckhands, firemen, coal passers, oilers, stewards, cooks, mates, engineers, stacked in the forward fifth of the ship, one atop another, with hooks for their shore clothes and a tin basin for their faces, and a single long table between the anchor cables. The owner's party aft, when every stateroom is full, numbers perhaps 12. 12 people in 4/5 of the ship. 58 in what's left. You did that sum in your first week too. You've stopped doing it. It doesn't come out different either. Charlie Veck is sitting on the edge of his bunk when you come in, already in his working whites, reading yesterday's New York Herald by lamplight with his lips not quite moving. Charlie is 22, from Poughkeepsie, second steward, and the nearest thing you have aboard to an older brother, which mostly expresses itself in him telling you terrible things for your own good. He gets the Herald off the shoreboat's boy every day for a nickel, folds it to the yachting column first, always the yachting column, the way another man would check prices on a crop he was growing, and smuggles it below inside his jacket, because printed papers lying about the crew quarters are untidy, and untidy aboard the Ondine is a species of sin. They've launched her, he says, not looking up. The Cup boat went off the ways at Bristol the end of last week, the 29th of June, it says here. Herreshoff built her out of metals nobody's ever put in a boat before. Bronze below the water, aluminum topsides. Aluminum, Danny. He taps the column with 2 fingers. Like a man knocking on a door he expects to open on something wonderful. They're calling her Defender. Come September, she races the Earl of Dunraven's new Valkyrie off Sandy Hook for the Cup, and every hull in this harbour will be down there to watch it. And that means us. Mark it. September. You mark it. Keep that folded newspaper in your mind's eye, and keep Charlie's finger tapping on it. Both will matter before we're done. You strip to the waist and wash at the basin. Cold fresh water, 1 dipperful, because fresh water is made by the ship's condensers and metered out to the crew like communion. And then you dress, and dressing is its own catechism. Working rig for morning. White duck trousers, white canvas shoes soled with rubber, so your footfall on deck makes no more noise than a cat's, and the plain white jacket. For serving at table there is the good jacket, brass-buttoned, with the owner's private emblem worked on the breast, and it hangs on your hook under a muslin sheet like something holy, because if it's stained you buy its replacement, and it costs $11, which is 13 days of your life. Every garment is a rank badge. The engineers wear officers' caps. The captain wears blue with gold lace a naval commander would respect. The owner wears white flannel and a soft cap and no insignia whatsoever, and that is the plainest suit on the ship, and it is the most expensive object in Rhode Island. And that too is the whole social order of 1895 in one sentence. Breakfast in the crew's mess is burgoo. Oatmeal, thick, with molasses. And tea the colour of harness leather, drunk standing in 9 minutes, while the second cook slings tin plates and insults with the same motion. And here Charlie, mouthful, delivers this morning's terrible thing for your own good, because the first guests of the season come aboard today. Coins, he says. First week of guests you'll find money. Under a mattress when you turn it. In a coat you brush. On the carpet under the edge of a bunk. A gold piece most times. You know what that is? Somebody's lost a gold piece. Nobody who owns a gold piece has ever lost one. He swallows, jabs the spoon out. It's a test, Danny. They put it there. The valet puts it there, or the lady's maid on orders. You pocket it. You're a thief, and you're ashore at the next port with no character. And no character means no yachts, no hotels, no clubs, nothing. Forever. You find money. You carry it to Mr. Averill with 2 fingers like it's a dead mouse. And you say where and when, and you forget it. Every season some boy on some yacht in this anchorage keeps the coin. Every season. He goes back to his burgoo. Don't be the boy. Remember the coin too. It's not aboard yet. It's coming. At 6 sharp, and sharp on this ship is a word with edges. The steward's department musters in the pantry, and Mr. Averill inspects his people the way the captain inspects the ship. 9 of you in a row between the china racks and the silver safe. Chief steward, second steward, 4 stewards of whom you are the last and least, 2 boys, and the stewardess who looks after the ladies' cabins. Mr. Averill walks the line slowly with his hands behind his back. He is 50 or thereabouts, small, grey, dry as a ship's biscuit, and he was trained, as he will tell you not often but always without warning, in the saloons of the Cunard mail steamers, where, he says, they fed 400 in a gale, and the coffee never once arrived cold, and no, he does not consider the Atlantic an excuse for anything, and he never will. He stops in front of you. He looks at your hands, which are clean. He looks at them longer, and under his looking you begin to understand they are somehow not clean enough, and your ears go hot. Holystone grit under the forefinger nail, he says, to the pantry at large, mildly, as if reporting weather. A man who carries the deck to the breakfast table might as well serve the eggs with a shovel. Then to you only a little less mildly. You're late, Kerrigan. You are not late. You have never once been late. He says it the way other men say good morning, and the first time he said it you argued, and what happened next taught you that aboard the Ondine the facts are whatever discipline needs them to be. So this morning you say what you've learned to say, which is, yes, Mr. Averill, and scrub the nail with the pantry brush until the grit and some of you comes out of it. Understand this man, because the season ahead belongs to him. The captain commands the ship, but you belong to Mr. Averill, and Mr. Averill runs the aft end of the Ondine on a system as fixed as gunnery. Every glass on this ship has a number. Every fork has a place in a felt-lined drawer, and the drawer has a chart, and the chart is in his head. He can stand in the middle of the saloon with his eyes shut and tell you which porthole is unlatched by the sound the room makes. His 3 commandments, delivered to you on your first morning in April, and never repeated because a thing said by Mr. Averill once has been said. Never be heard. Never be empty-handed. Never make them ask. If the owner has to ask for a thing, a match, a chart, his spectacles, the time, then the steward's department has already failed, because a great servant serves the want before it becomes a request. You thought that was mysticism in April. You've since watched him place an ashtray at a guest's elbow 4 seconds before the guest's cigar needed it. 4 seconds, and the guest never saw the ashtray arrive, never saw Averill at all, simply flicked his ash into a dish that had always been there. It is not mysticism. It is the profession. You're 3 months into learning that it might be the deepest profession you have ever seen practiced, and that nobody it is practiced upon will ever once notice it exists. Polished enough, pressed enough, invisible enough. That's the standard. You'll hear those 3 words in your own skull for the rest of your life. Then he gives out the day, dry as dictation. The owner's party arrives from New York by the morning boat. Mr. Stanhope, his wife, their daughter, 6 guests with a valet and 2 maids, staterooms 2 through 6. Flowers are coming off at 7, and this you already know, because you've been aboard the flower count since April. The Ondine at anchor takes on fresh-cut flowers every single morning. Roses and carnations and whatever the Newport glasshouses are proudest of, $7 a day, every day, all season. And at sea the ice room carries them by the crate packed like fish, so that a vase 80 miles offshore never holds a bloom more than a day old. $7 a day is a quarter of your month. In the vases it lasts until tomorrow. Then it goes over the side, and the tide takes a little drowned garden away from the ship every morning, and you have watched a boatswain's mate lean on the rail and watch it go with an expression you have decided not to understand. Kerrigan, Mr. Averill again, at the end, when the others have scattered to their stations. He holds out a key on a worn brass ring, and the morning changes size. The flag locker, he says, signals, ensigns, the club burgee, and the owner's private signal. You'll have the hoists now, mornings and sunset, and the illuminations when they're ordered. Mr. Grieve has the boatswain's opinion of your knots, which is that they will do, which from the boatswain is poetry. A pause, and the dry grey eyes come up to yours, and for once they hold. The private signal is the owner afloat, Kerrigan. When it's flying he's aboard, and every glass in this anchorage knows it. Hoisted foul or hoisted slow, and the Ondine is laughed at from here to Sandy Hook by people whose whole cargo is laughter. Do you understand what I'm giving you? Yes, Mr. Averill. You don't, entirely, not yet. But you take the key, and you feel it all day against your chest like a coal with the heat still in it, and you will feel it again on a September afternoon this story is sailing toward, when that flag in your 2 hands are, for 1 minute, the loudest thing on the Atlantic seaboard. The next 3 hours are the hidden hours, the ones the title of this story promised you, so let's spend them properly. Between 6 and 9 on an arrival morning, the whole aft end of the Ondine is turned out the way a jeweller opens his cases, and you are one of the hands doing the turning, and this is the only way anyone of your class will ever see these rooms. Working in them, backward, with a cloth. Start in the main saloon, because everything starts in the main saloon. It runs the full 30-foot beam of the ship, panelled floor to ceiling in San Domingo mahogany, rubbed with oil until it holds your reflection the way still water does, and the ceiling is white and gold, and the skylight overhead is stained glass, so that on a bright morning the room fills with soft drowned colours like the inside of a chapel. There is a fireplace, understand that, a working marble fireplace, on a ship with a brass fender and a fire of cannel coal laid ready in July on the chance that a damp evening might want it. There's a bookcase with glass doors and 300 volumes bound in Morocco leather that you dust weekly and have never once seen open in a guest's hands. And there is the piano, a small grand in a rosewood case, built special by Steinway's people, with bronze fittings below decks to bear the sea air, bolted through the carpet to the steel beneath, which has always seemed to you the perfect emblem of this whole world, the most delicate thing money can buy, chained down hard against the ocean, pretending the ocean isn't there. You know this room the way a surgeon knows a body, which is to say from underneath. You know the carpet is woven in one piece, to the room's own shape, in a mill in Massachusetts, and what it cost. Mr. Averill has the invoice book. and the figure is $900, which is 3 years of you. And you know it because you are the one who goes over it on your knees with a stiff brush and tea leaves to lift the dust. You know the lamps are silver, hung in gimbals so they swing level when the ship rolls, and you know each one comes apart into 11 pieces per cleaning, because your hands have had them apart 100 times. The guests see a room. You see 4 hours of labour a day, disguised as a room. Both of you are right, and only one of you is ever allowed to say so out loud. After the saloon, the staterooms, and this morning you and the stewardess and one of the boys work down the line of them like a gun crew. Mattresses turned, linen changed. Linen from Belfast monogrammed, changed every single day at sea, boiled and pressed in the ship's own laundry by 2 Chinese laundrymen who are the hardest worked and least seen men aboard, save only the black gang. Every stateroom is a different wood. 1 satin wood, 1 bird's eye maple, 1 white enamel and gold like a lady's jewel case. And everyone has its marble basin with silver taps, its electric call bell wired to the pantry board with its own little numbered flag, its brass bedstead swung in gimbals in the 2 best rooms, so that the owner and his wife may sleep level in a seaway, while the men who feed the boilers sleep in a forecastle that stands on its head. The owner's own suite runs the ship's full width right aft. Bedroom, sitting room, dressing room, and the bathroom Charlie surveyed with his feet. The marble tub, the 3 kinds of water, the fittings that are not brass. You polish gold plate differently from brass, gentler, with rouge on a chamois. And the first time Mr. Averill watched you do it, he said the only warm thing he said that whole first month. Lighter, boy, you're not scrubbing a doorknob, you're stroking a cat. People are sure when they hear about the gold taps, and they do hear, the Sunday papers print these inventories the way they print murders. Always ask the same question, which is why, and the honest answer, the one you've worked out at the polishing itself, is the simplest and worst one. Because brass must be polished every day, and gold need only be wiped, and the difference between those 2 labours is nothing to the man who pays for them and everything to the look of effortlessness the ship exists to wear. Even the extravagance is practical once you see it from underneath, especially then. Now forward through the pantry, to the part of the hidden luxury that even the guests only half see, the galley and the man who rules it. The Ondine's galley is a room of scoured zinc and black-leaded iron a landsman would take for a small hotel kitchen, worked by a chef, 2 undercooks and a scullery boy, and separately, always separately, the crew's cook, because the 2 kitchens of this ship, no more mixed than the 2 staircases do. The chef is Monsieur Aubert, a Lyonnais, 40 years old, moustached like a dragoon, hired away from a New York club at a figure the glory hole discusses in the dark, the way other men discuss shipwrecks. $6,000 for the season is the number Charlie swears to. And if it's half that, it is still 4 times the captain, and the captain holds a master's certificate and 58 lives, and Monsieur Aubert holds a whisk. Nobody aboard resents it, which tells you something true about 1895. Everyone understands that a rival millionaire can hire away your chef at dinner and boast of it, but no one has ever tried to steal another man's captain. The market has spoken about what is rare. Aubert's stores read like the manifest of a small and very strange merchant ship. An ice room of 40 tons capacity, loaded in New York, holding at this moment the flowers, 40 brace of squab, a crate of Georgia peaches, cream from a farm in Portsmouth that sends its cans out by launch each dawn, and green turtle for soup, alive when it came aboard, which is a thing you helped carry and would rather not describe before sleep. A fish well aft where lobsters ride to their appointment, and below the saloon sole, reached by a hatch under the sideboard, the cellar, 2,000 bottles racked in sawdust in cradles cut to the roll of the ship, claret and hock and Madeira older than the Republic, and champagne above all, the wine of this coast in this decade, 300 bottles of it at the season's start, and Mr. Averil's cellar book records every cork drawn, and the season will finish the 300 and send ashore for more. A bottle of the good champagne costs at the importers about what you earn in a week. On a hot afternoon with guests aboard, the Ondine drinks a case. And it is here, this particular July morning, in the pantry with the arrival bustle all around you, that the season lays its first small trap for you personally. Your task before the boat comes off. Wash and inspect the banquet champagne glasses, the owner's monogram set, 48 of them, baccarat crystal with the Stanhope cipher cut into the bowl, each one numbered on its rack peg in Mr. Averil's own crabbed ink. You wash them one at a time in a wooden tub padded with flannel, because crystal against zinc is a hanging offence, and you hold each glass to the light of the port and ring it once with a fingernail and listen. 47. Ring like little bells. Number 48 doesn't. Number 48 answers your nail with a dead tick, and when you turn it slowly against the light you find it. A hairline crack, fine as a hair from your own head, walking down from the lip an inch into the cipher itself. You didn't do it. You know you didn't do it. It came out of the rack with the floor already in it, some guests doing weeks ago, or the seas. But you're the last and least steward aboard, and the glass is in your two hands, and the rule of every pantry you've ever heard of is that breakage found is breakage owned. A glass from a monogrammed baccarat set cannot be replaced from a shop in Newport. It must be ordered from France, matched to the cipher, and the cost. You don't know the cost. That's what decides you, if you're honest. Not courage, not cunning. Just the blank of not knowing whether the number would be a week of you or a season of you. So you do the thing you will think about at odd moments for the rest of this story. You dry number 48 with more tenderness than you've ever shown anything, and you set it at the back of its rack. Crack turned inward toward the shadow, and you say nothing. 48 glasses for a table that will never seat more than 24. The back rank may sleep out the season untouched. You close the rack, and your heart is going like a folded-up bird, and Mr. Averil passes behind you at that exact moment, of course he does, and says only, "Boats away from the wharf, Kerrigan. Jacket." Remember glass number 48, back rank cracked to the shadow. It stands there through everything that's coming, patient as a debt. One more thing while you button the good jacket, because you'll hear the line quoted for the rest of your life, and you may as well hear it now. Aboard, where it lives. They say, and I want the lamplight on that phrase, they say, because no two books agree on when or to whom, and a story this good has been polished by too many hands to trust its edges. They say that a man once asked Mr. J.P. Morgan of the black corsair that anchors some evenings within a biscuit toss of you, what it cost him to run her by the year. And Morgan is supposed to have answered that any man who has to ask that question has no business owning a yacht. Attributed law, then. File it beside the sea serpents. But here is what is not law, because the figures sit in ledgers men have counted. Run in a great steam yacht through a single season. Wages for 58. Coal by the hundreds of tons, provisions, insurance, paint, flowers, France. comes to something between $100,000 and $200,000 a year. A good carpenter ashore this summer earns perhaps $600 in 12 months. Call it a working man's lifetime, all 40 years of it, spent in one season, every season, on one ship, to float one family and their friends between two harbours in perfect comfort. You're not supposed to do that arithmetic in your head while you stand at the rail in your brass buttons watching the owner's launch come down the harbour through the last of the mist. You do it anyway. The launch grows larger, the arithmetic doesn't come out different, but you square your shoulders all the same, because 6 bells has gone, the mist has lifted off the anchorage all at once just as promised, the fleet is lying around you black and white and gilded on water like hammered pewter. Your flag halyards are clear and ready at the staff, and the season, the real season, the one with the people in it, is about 30 yards away and closing. The launch comes alongside the accommodation ladder with her engine cut at exactly the right 10 yards, the way everything on this ship happens at exactly the right anything, and the boatswain's pipe goes up thin and silver over the water, and Mr. Ward Stanhope comes up his own ladder onto his own deck, and at that instant, not one breath after, your hands are hauling the halyard, and the owner's private signal breaks out at the main truck. A swallow-tailed flag, white star on a blue ground, snapping open against the July sky. Around the anchorage, on a dozen decks, you know without looking that glasses have swung toward that patch of colour, and men have said to one another, "Stanhope's aboard." That is what the flag is. A sentence written in bunting, read by an entire harbour, and your 2 hands wrote it, and if anyone tells you there's no pride in service, they have never broken out a private signal clean on the first pull, with the whole New York Yacht Club watching. First time, not the last. The last time comes in September, and it will be a louder sentence altogether. Mr. Stanhope himself, since you'll be carrying his coffee for the next 4 months, 55, railroads and banking, a broad grey man who moves the way heavy furniture would move if it could, unhurried, certain the floor will hold. He is not the richest man in this harbour. In the summer of 1895 the harbour includes Astors and Vanderbilts, and nobody outranks that water. But he is rich the way the bay is wet all the way down. On deck he says 4 words, "Morning, Captain, all well?" And Captain Loring, waiting at the gangway in his gold lace, says, "All well, sir," and that exchange, you will learn, is the entire management structure of a $500,000 ship. Everything else is done for him or before him. He has not carried a key, counted money, or opened a door for himself within living memory. And here is the strange true thing you will chew on all season. He is not ridiculous. Ashore in his offices, men say, he is quick and hard and dangerous. It is only that between the man and the world at every point of friction, someone like you has been inserted, the way engineers pack grease around a bearing. Behind him, Mrs. Stanhope in travelling grey, who looks at the ship the way a colonel inspects a regiment that has never yet let her down and had better not begin today. Behind her, Miss Alice Stanhope, 19, your own age to the summer, a fact you're careful never to think about for longer than a second at a time. And she comes up the ladder carrying against her mother's visible preference a small black box by a leather strap, a Kodak. The pocket camera, the new toy of the young this decade, you press the button, the shop in the advertisement does the rest. And Miss Alice photographs everything. The harbour, the gulls, the wake, her mother's disapproving back. The crew calls it the clicker, and the crew is wary of it, because crew are not photographed, any more than the stokehold is toured. There will come a grey September afternoon when that little black box points for once at you and against every rule of this floating world clicks. Remember the Kodak. Then the guests, 6 of them, and their servants, and here the ship's layers show themselves in the space of 2 minutes at a gangway. Because Mr. Pruitt, the owner's valet, comes aboard in a black coat and a bowler, carrying nothing but a dressing case, and 2 seamen jump for the trunks. And Pruitt is a servant same as you, and Pruitt is also as far above you as the owner is above a clam digger, and every one of the 3 of you knows the exact width of every one of those gaps without a word being spent. Pruitt is somewhere past 40, smooth-faced, economical, with the permanently disappointed mouth of a man who has spent 20 years watching other people fold trousers wrong. He has been with Mr. Stanhope 19 years. He sleeps aft, in a cabin near his master's, not forward with you, a servant geographically among the owners, which is its own strange exile belonging to neither end of the ship. He will say perhaps 40 sentences to you all season. You will end by valuing several of them more than most of what you've ever been told. And with the maids comes Nellie Doyle, lady's maid to one of the guest wives, Mrs. Carrow, Nellie from County Wexford by way of a Fifth Avenue back staircase, 23, quick-eyed, with a laugh she keeps furled on duty like signal flags in a locker. She takes the pantry's measure in one look as she's led below, takes yours in a second look and says, "Well, they keep the help polished on this boat anyway," and is gone aft after her mistress's hat boxes, and Charlie catches your expression and says no, the way a man says it about a 4th glass of beer, meaning not that you won't, but that you'll be sorry. The servants' world afloat has its own seasons, Danny, and they are shorter and more honest than the one above. Friendships of a summer, sealed at a pantry table, dissolved on a pier in October, you'll see. Now watch a deck breakfast, because this, not the ballrooms ashore this, is the shore of the hidden luxury, the daily unphotographed thing. 9:30, under the after-awning, the harbour still cool. 1 round table, damask to the deck. The awning overhead has been trimmed twice already, so that no direct sun touches the butter. Melons on ice, peaches on ice, squab, broiled from the ice room. Rolls that Monsieur Aubert's undercook began at 4:30, the same hour your knees hit the teak, so that everything at this table, the pale deck included, is the fruit of labour performed in the dark by people now invisible. Coffee in a silver pot with the Stanhope cipher, the mail and the New York papers, fetched by launch at 7, ironed, yes, ironed, a cool iron run over the fold so the sheets lie flat and the ink doesn't smut the fingers, racked beside the owner's chair. He reads the market pages. Mrs. Carrow reads the social columns aloud, which this July are already humming about the season's great subject, the Cup, the Earl of Dunraven's challenger crossing the Atlantic while her rival tunes up off Rhode Island. The ladies wear white. The men wear white. The ship wears white. Nobody at the table performs a single action except eating, reading, and being amused, and around them, unseen, the machine hums. You at the sideboard with the second pot, the boy at the bellboard, Averil in the doorway shadow reading the table like sheet music, a seaman aloft silently retrimming the awning as the sun swings, and here is your professional life in one small scene, the kind that never makes the memoirs. Mrs. Carrow, wanting more coffee, does not ask for coffee. She does not look at you. She looks at her cup. That's all. A 2-second downward glance mid-sentence without pausing in her reading of the Newport list. And the cup is filled from behind her right shoulder before the glance ends. And she has never seen you, this morning or ever. You could stand at her elbow for the length of a sermon, and she would be unable, at the end of it, to say whether you were tall or short, boy or grandfather. This is not cruelty. Understand that, because it took you all of May to understand it. Cruelty would require her to have noticed you and decided against you. This is the finished product itself, service so smooth it has abolished the servant. You are the best dressed, best fed, most completely erased 19-year-old in the state of Rhode Island. Polished enough, pressed enough, invisible enough. Well, you think, at least the invisible eat. And they do. That's the bargain. And let's be honest about it the way the ledgers are. Your $25 a month clears your hands untouched, because your bed and your board are the ship's, and the crew's table, by the standard of any working table ashore, is lavish. Fresh meat daily, soft bread, butter, the guests' leavings besides, half a melon, the second half of a squab, coming forward by pantry custom to be eaten standing at the mess table by men who name them after the guest who left them. Eating Mrs. Carrow, Charlie calls it. Your father this same morning is standing to his waist in the Great South Bay lifting an 18-foot pair of tongs, and he will earn today, if the beds are kind, $1.25 and eat salt pork. You send him $10 a month by postal order from Thames Street, and in the envelope you do not describe the melons. There's no way to write it that doesn't shame one of you, and you've never worked out which. The days at anchor take their shape, and the shape hardly varies. And that sameness, I'll tell you honestly, since we're here to sleep, is half the luxury. Ashore, even for the rich, the world intrudes. Dust, traffic, other people. Afloat, nothing intrudes. The morning launch to the reading room or the golf links for the gentlemen. The forenoon calls, yacht to yacht. Ladies handed down into launches by seamen whose hands they never see. Luncheon under the awning. The afternoon sail down the bay if there's a breeze worth wearing. Or bridge in the saloon if there isn't. The evening launch ashore to dinner at one of the cottages. And cottage, you have learned, is what this coast calls a 50-room marble house, in the same spirit that your glory hole is called glory. Or dinner aboard, full fig, the baccarat out, the piano open, Aubert ascending to his art. 7 courses on a Tuesday for no reason. Green turtle soup, bass caught by the ship's own cook's line at dawn, the squab, a saddle of lamb, Roman punch, salad, an ice carved in the shape of the Ondine herself, carried in on a silver sea. The first big dinner of the season you serve rigid as a marlinspike, counting glasses in your head, one eye all night on the rack behind the sideboard where number 48 stands in its shadow, with its crack turned to the wall, like a man hiding a torn coat sleeve. 24 covers, 24 glasses, the back rank never touched. The cork count that night, in Averil's book, in Averil's ink, 19 bottles. You lie in your bunk afterward doing wages into wine, and wine into wages until the figures give out. And above your head through the deck you can hear the piano, very faint, and a woman singing something slow, and the tide clucking along the plates an inch from your ear. And that is the sound of the summer of 1895, both halves of it at once, and you fall asleep between them. But you have not yet been below, not properly, not all the way down, and the title of this story owes you that room most of all, because 2 mornings later the wardroom coffee urn scalds its gasket, and Mr. Averill wants the spare from the engineer's stores, and the engineer's stores are aft of the fire room. And so, on a bright blue 8 o'clock with the deck above all melons and ironed newspapers, you go down the ladder into the other half of the hidden, down to where the Ondine stops pretending to be a swan and shows you what she runs on. You feel the fire room before you reach it, the way you feel a headache coming. 1 deck down, the air thickens. 2 decks down, it presses. The ladder rails go from cool to blood-warm to hot enough that you shift your grip, and the light changes from July to lamplight to a shaking orange that comes up the trunk from below with a smell that is nothing at all like the rest of the ship. Hot iron, sulphur, ash, steam off wet cinders, and under it the sweetish burnt oil breath of the engine room, which the oilers say gets into your marrow after a season and never leaves. The sound swallows you whole. Not one sound. A weather system. The roar of draught through the fires, the shovel scrape, the clang of a furnace door swung and slammed, the felt more than heard thud of the engines turning over dead slow to work the dynamo and the pumps, and through everything the whine of the forced air blowers, because the fires down here cannot breathe on their own and must be force-fed air like everything else aboard is force-fed something. At anchor, mind. This is the quiet day. This is the fire room resting. The Ondine at her mooring, doing absolutely nothing, burns between 3 and 4 tons of coal a day. She burns it to spin the dynamo for the electric lights, to keep steam on the ice machine, the pumps, the launch's boiler, the galley's auxiliary, the hot water in the marble bathroom, and to hold her main boilers warm against the possibility that the owner, at any hour, on any whim, might want his ship to go somewhere. That readiness, that permanent purring, never-used readiness, is perhaps the purest luxury aboard, purer than the gold taps, and it is brought down here by hand, one shovelful at a time, out of bunkers that hold 240 tons. Underway at her easy 12 knots, she eats 12 to 15 tons a day, a ton and better every 2 hours, and every pound of it enters the furnaces off the blade of somebody's shovel. There is no other way. There will be no other way for another generation. The Swan is paddling, and the paddling is men. A dozen of them on the black gang all told, firemen and coal passers, 4 to a watch when steaming, and the one nearest the ladder when you come down is the one you know from the crew's mess. Janos Berech, fireman, Hungarian out of a Pennsylvania patch town by way of an oar boat, 34 years old and built like something riveted, stripped to the waist with a sweat rag around his neck and his torso shining like wet coal. Both forearms carry the pale, slick scars of old burns, laid one over another like brushstrokes, which is simply what a fireman's arms are, the trade's handwriting on the man. He fires with an economy that is almost gentleness. Door open, 3 shovels laid just so, spread, not heaped. A fire is fed like a sick man, he told you once, little and often and level. Slice bar in, door slammed, 8 seconds of open flame the whole visit, because an open door wastes draught and skins your face. Then he sees you on the ladder with your urn gasket errand and grins white out of a black face and points you aft with the shovel like a duke directing traffic. The thermometer screwed to the stanchion by the ladder. You look, because you have heard the number and not believed it. Stands at 118 degrees. In September, running south, in a following wind that steals the ventilator's breath, it will pass 130. The fireman stand watches 4 hours on, 8 off, and in the hot latitudes even owners' logs and engineers' journals record what that costs. Men hauled up the fiddly ladder, cramped double with heat, laid on deck in the shade of the very awning the guests sit under an hour later, dosed with oatmeal water and put back down the ladder next watch. Janos earns $40 a month, which is 15 more than you, and the glory hole agrees the black gang is underpaid at double it. He is sending money to a brother in Miskolc and a wife in Pennsylvania, and he can tell you to the dollar what a ton of coal costs the owner. $4.50 delivered alongside, and what he is paid to move it, which he has worked out with a pencil stub at a few dimes the ton, lifted twice, bunker to plates, plates to fire. He did that arithmetic for you one supper without bitterness, chewing, as if reporting a curiosity of nature. It comes out different for everybody aboard, Danny. That's the one sum this whole gleaming coast is built on. While the engineer's storekeeper hunts your gasket, you stand out of the way and watch the watchwork. And this is where the season quietly hands you the sentence you will carry off this ship and keep for 50 years. Janos rests his shovel, drinks half a dipper of oatmeal water, nods once at the deckhead, at the whole unseen world of white awnings and iced melons and ironed newspapers 18 feet above his fire, and says in his flattened Patchtown English, "You know what is the teak, boy? The teak is the lid." He puts the dipper back on its nail. Every kettle got a lid. Lid is the part you can touch. Kettle is the part that works. And he opens the furnace door and the light climbs his scars and he feeds the fire. Spread, not heaped, little and often. And that is the entire political economy of the Gilded Age delivered in a fire room in 9 seconds by a man the deck above does not know exists, and no professor will ever say it shorter. One more thing happens down there, small as a coin, and you must keep it. When you turn for the ladder, gasket in your fist, Janos calls you back and takes down from a shelf over the tool bench a little flat tin, the size of a snuff box, dented with a Magyar word scratched into the lid. Inside, a yellowish salve, mutton tallow and marigold, his wife renders it. Every letter from Pennsylvania brings a fresh tin, and he shows you the back of his left hand where a fresh burn is already skinning over clean and pale. For when the ship bites you, he says, she bites everybody once before the season is out. Deck, engine, pantry, everybody once. When she bites, come down. He puts the tin back on its shelf, exact to its dust shadow, the way Avril racks a glass. 2 men could not be less alike, and they keep their kingdoms identically. You go up the ladder with your gasket, and the air cools around you rung by rung like forgiveness, and you come out of the fiddly door into a morning so blue and white and rich, with breakfast smells that your own eyes accuse you of having dreamed the room below. You stand a moment by the rail, letting the sweat dry, and the Ondine rides around you serene as a lily, and now you can never again not know what she is. Above the waterline, mahogany, marble, roses, a piano. Below it, 240 tons of coal and a dozen scarred men. The waterline is not a fact of naval architecture, Danny. It is the fact of the age. Every fortune on this anchorage has one. The line below which the work happens and above which the shine happens. And the whole art of 1895, its architecture and its manners and its yachting news, is the art of keeping the line where the guests can't see it. The ship bites everybody once. Remember the tin on its shelf. And because this world tolerates no meditations longer than a pot of coffee stays hot, the moment ends the way all your moments end, with a bell. The pantry board 3 decks up is calling number 4 stateroom, and number 4 is Mrs. Carrow, and Mrs. Carrow before 11 means dry toast, the second best marmalade, and no conversation, and the wardroom still wants its urn mended, and Mr. Avril will already be standing where he can see the fiddly door with his watch in his memory, if not in his hand. You go. You take the ladders 2 at a time, on your toes, silent, gasket in your pocket, salve tin in your mind, and the day folds you back into its white immaculate machinery between one bell and the next, and the fires burn on under the melons, little and often and level, all summer long. Now, July. Newport in July of 1895 is the capital of a small, strange country, and its harbour is that country's parliament, and you spend the month learning to read it the way you once read Tides. The fleet lies thickest between Goat Island and the town wharves, and from the Ondine's deck, going about your work, you learn the great hulls by silhouette the way farm boys know horses. The black bark rigged one with the raked funnel that comes and goes on banker's hours, appearing off the anchorage some evenings with her owner aboard and gone again before the week turns, is Mr. J.P. Morgan's Corsair, the second Corsair, 5 years old, built when he found her predecessor insufficient, near enough the Ondine's own length, and, the pantry grapevine swears, plainer inside. Morgan's luxury is said to be black hulls, deep chairs, and silence. The white full-rigged presence that arrives in August like a visiting government is Noor Mahal, the Astor yacht, launched in 1884. Her name lifted out of a Persian romance. It means light of the harem, which the crew's mess has naturally shortened to the light, as in the light wants 40 pounds of ice they're sending their launch. And the long lean one that keeps mostly to the eastward and flies, a burgee that is not the New York Yacht Club's, is Atalanta. And Atalanta is a story you make Charlie tell you twice, because Atalanta was Jay Gould's, the Wall Street Gould, the Terror, dead these 3 years, and the yacht is in the family still. And when Gould, with his railroads and his millions and his 230-foot steam yacht, put himself up for the New York Yacht Club back in the 80s, the club blackballed him. Flat. Wouldn't have him. All that money stood at the door of a wooden clubhouse, and the door did not open. So Gould went off and founded a yacht club of his own across the Sound, the American Yacht Club, the way another man might build his own tavern after being put out of one. And the moral, Charlie says, folding his herald with the air of a man delivering the day's sermon, is that you can buy the water, Danny, and you can buy the boat, but the club is the club. Even up there, above the waterline, above the melons, there are rooms with doors, and men standing outside them holding their hats, and some of the richest men in America have stood in that exact posture. It's servants all the way up, Danny. Every man on this coast is holding somebody's coffee. The cottages you come to know from the sea, which everyone aboard agrees is the only honest angle. On calls and errands runs down the harbour and along the cliff walk shore, handling lines in the launch's bow. You pass below them in review. White marble catching the forenoon sun like a courthouse, dreaming it is a temple. That one is Marble House, finished just 3 years ago for Mr. William K. Vanderbilt's Alva. $11 million, the papers said, a number nobody aboard will even joke about. And going up grey and enormous on its lawn above the walk, a construction site all this summer behind board fences, the newest and biggest of all, which the Vanderbilts will call the Breakers when it opens next year with 70 rooms. 70 rooms, 500 feet of lawn, and the family will use it 8 weeks a year. From the water, with the launch engine idling and the surf sorting its gravel under the wall, the cottages stand along the cliff like the front rank of something, like a fleet themselves, anchored in grass, dressed over all in awnings. And the oldest seaman in the launch crew, a Swede who has been in yachts 30 years, looks up at them and delivers the launch crew's entire opinion of the Gilded Age in one line as he coils. Fine houses, nobody home but the help. Which is, you realise as the launch swings, the cottage's own version of the waterline. Even the palaces are mostly hidden ship. 40 servants under those roofs to 12 family. Same ratio as the Ondine. Same iron rule that the work be done out of sight. Backstairs, servants' wings behind false fronts, dinner for 60 conjured out of basements nobody tours. The whole coast is one vessel, Danny. Above the line, marble. Below the line, coal. The line runs through the houses same as the hulls. It runs through the whole country. You're just young enough this summer to be surprised by it, and you will never entirely stop being surprised by it, and that is probably the best thing this season will do for you. Twice that month, the harbour performs its two great rituals, and you are working crew for both, and they are the two ends of the same idea. The first is noise, salutes. A commodore arrives on the 11th, and the fleet acknowledges. The little brass swivel on the Ondina's after rail, the one that has never been aimed at anything, gets its afternoon of glory, and you learn that even ceremony is your department, because someone must swab, load, prick, fire, and recover the gun, and polish away its smoke stain after, so that saluting looks effortless too. Dozens of yachts, one after another, banging their small thunder across the anchorage in strict order of rank, while the gulls go up off Goat Island in one offended sheet. It is the most formal racket you've ever heard, a conversation of guns in which every charge costs half your day's pay and says nothing but names, and the ladies under the awnings applaud the pretty smoke. The second is light, and the light is yours, and it gives this story its view from the masthead. So climb with me. Illumination night, the last week of July. The fleet dresses in fire. Word goes around the anchorage in the forenoon. The yachts will illuminate this evening, and all afternoon you and the boatswain's party rig the Ondine strings. Japanese lanterns on the awning ridges, and up the masts and along the sheer lines of small electric globes, because this ship makes her own lightning and can wear it. And at dusk it is you, flag key on your chest, the boatswain's grudging poetry having promoted you to all things hoisted, who Mr. Grieve sends aloft to the main truck, to clear a fouled string where the masthead light crosses the private signal's halyard block. So you go up, ratlines to the cross trees, then bare mast, shoes hooked behind you, 90 feet, the harbour opening under you with every reach like something poured, and you are standing on the cross trees with your arm around the warm, varnished wood of the topmast, untangling wire by feel when the fleet lights. Not all at once, better than all at once. It starts somewhere up by the torpedo station, one yacht going gold, then 3 answering, then the contagion running down the anchorage hull by hull, strings of light climbing masts and dropping along sheer lines, until the whole harbour is drawn in fire on black water, every ship doubled by her own reflection, 50, 60 illuminated hulls, the town's gaslights behind them, rockets starting up from somebody's afterdeck to the southward, and the water so still that the rockets burst twice, once in the sky and once in the sea. Music comes off the flagship's deck, a waltz, thinned by a quarter-mile of night air to something that is hardly sound at all, more like remembering a waltz. Launches full of white dresses go drawing bright scratches between the hulls, and underneath every 3rd or 4th string of lights, where nobody in the launches looks, you can see the dynamo smoke standing straight up out of the funnels, 50 fire rooms, a couple of 100 Janices, feeding the spectacle a shovelful at a time, little and often and level. From 90 feet up, alone, unseen, with wire in your teeth, you look at the most beautiful thing you've ever been shown or ever will be. You know it at the time, which is rare. That is the strange gift of that mast. And you think both true thoughts at once. and you hold them the way the harbour holds the lights and their reflections. It is entirely false, all of it, a lid on a kettle, paid for out of arithmetic that doesn't come out different. And it is entirely unbearably beautiful, and you are part of it, a small paid invisible part, a cog with a flag key, but here, aloft, inside the spectacle itself, where not one man in 100,000 will ever stand. Barely a cog, but here, both true. All the way down the mast, both true. It never resolves, that pair. 50 years from tonight, an old man on a porch on Long Island will still be turning it over. You clear the fouled string. The masthead lights come on around you like a summer constellation being invented, close enough to touch, warm as fresh bread. And when you come down, palms smelling of varnish and tar, Nellie Doyle is at the rail in the waist, off duty, her mistress ashore at the Ocean House ball, and she has watched the whole descent with her furled laugh half unfurled, and she hands you, wordless, a cup of the crew's leather-coloured tea she has somehow charmed out of the galley at full dark, and the two of you stand at the rail, drinking tea with the burning fleet laid out before you like something served. "My mother scrubbed floors in Wexford," she says eventually to the lights. "If she could see what I'm looking at this minute, she'd cross herself. Then she'd ask who does the scrubbing." A sip. "God's truth, Danny, that's the whole of it. Somewhere there's people it's just beautiful for. Must be grand to be them." And that, from Nellie Doyle at a rail in July, is the other sentence you keep, the pair to Janos's kettle. You will hear finer-dressed people say much stupider things about that summer, in memoirs bound in Morocco. Nobody says it truer. 2 bells of the first watch strike along the fleet, ship answering ship. The little clear notes hopping across the water between the strings of light. 9 o'clock. Down the harbour, one by one, earliest bedtimes first, the yachts begin to put their fires out. The lights' fires, never the boilers, and the reflections fold up off the water, and the anchorage goes back to riding lights. And tomorrow the lanterns come down and are stowed by the same hands that rigged them, yours among them, so that by forenoon there will be no evidence the beauty ever happened, which is, as you now permanently understand, the house style of this entire civilization. August is coming. The light of the harem is standing in from the eastward. The papers are counting days to the cup, and Mr. Stanhope has let it be known, through channels, owner to captain, captain to mates, Averil to pantry, which is how all weather arrives, that when the New York Yacht Club squadron goes down the Sound this month on its annual cruise, the Ondine goes with it, and when Defender meets Valkyrie off Sandy Hook in September, the Ondine will be there in the Spectator fleet, guests aboard, full state. The season is done idling. From here, this story points like a compass needle at 3 days in September, and everything between is the run-up sea. But ships that go places must first be fed, and so August opens with the one day in the calendar when the Ondine's 2 worlds are forced briefly, hatefully into each other's sight. Coaling day. The guests are put ashore for it. That is the first fact and the most honest one. The family spends the day at the cottages precisely so they need never see what the day is, and the collier comes alongside at 7 with her rust and her reek, and the beautiful ship surrenders. Canvas is laid over the teak you whiten every dawn. The bright work is bagged in flannel like furniture in a dead man's house. And then for 9 hours the whole crew, deck, engine, and yes, stewards, everyone but the cook at his stove and the officer of the deck, swings baskets and trims barrows as 160 tons of Pocahontas coal comes aboard in a black fog that gets into teeth, ears, bread and the future. Coal dust hangs in the ventilators for days. It appears ghostly, grey on a boiled shirt cuff. A week later off Block Island, and Mr. Averill regards it when it appears the way other men regard sacrilege. By evening the collier hauls off, and then begins the second labour, which is erasing the first. Mr. Grieve driving the washdown fore and aft, canvas up, flannel off, teak scrubbed twice, and by the time the launch brings the family back at 6, the Ondine is white and innocent and smells of soap and roses, and Miss Alice, coming up the ladder, says, "Why, she's prettier than we left her." And she's right, and no one tells her why, and that is coaling day. The hidden half doing violence to the shown half, and then hiding the violence, all in one turn of daylight. "The ship bites everybody once," Janos said. "Coaling day is the day she gnaws the whole crew at once gently, and you sleep that night like something dropped. Then the squadron sails, and you see the thing the newspapers call yachting. The New York Yacht Club cruise, the first week of August. The fleet goes down the Sound and works east by stages. Glen Cove, Morris Cove, New London, Shelter Island, and home to Newport. 40, 50 sail and steam together, the finest procession this country produces, and each day's run between anchorages is sailed as a race, with prizes, and the evening anchorages are one continuous dinner party, distributed across 2 miles of water. And here is the sight you did not have a word for until Charlie supplied it. The great schooners run their day's race stripped for business, decks alive with 30 paid hands in white duck laying onto sheets and halyards, professional sailing masters at the wheels conning them like cavalry, and the owners, the gentlemen whose names the yachts race under, whose names the newspapers will print above the Times, sit aft in wicker chairs under the awning with field glasses and cigars, watching their own boats race the way a man watches his horse run. Some of them are real seamen, in fairness. A few could take the wheel and be obeyed. But the institution, Danny, the institution is this. The owner races his reputation, and his crew races his boat, and at the gun it is the owner who is cheered, and at the prize dinner it is the owner who rises, and somewhere forward of the mainmast 30 men in white duck eat their supper standing, having beaten, personally with their hands and backs in front of witnesses, 30 other men who will also not be mentioned. Never touch a rope, some of them, Charlie says, watching a famous sloop cross a famous schooner's bow to a roar from the excursion steamers. Not from May to October. It's the purest thing in the world, if you think about it. They've got winning itself down to a thing the help does. He says it without heat. Aboard the Ondine, purity of that particular kind is the climate, and you don't curse the climate. You just learn what it grows. The cruise gives you your storm too. Every season carries one, and yours comes on the run from New London. A hard, black-hearted southwest squall that jumps the fleet at mid-afternoon with rain like buckshot and the Sound gone the colour of a knife. And you learn what a steam yacht's hidden half is for. The sailing yachts scatter, shortening down, glorious and desperate. The Ondine simply leans her shoulder into it and holds her line, because below, on the plates, the watch has gone to 4 men, and the stokehold thermometer has found new convictions, and Janos and his mates are feeding her little, and often and level, while the sea tries the ports with both fists. Your own war is fought in the pantry, and it is real war by pantry standards. Every rack wedged, every fiddle up on every table, the baccarat swaddled like infantry in bomb-proofs, you and Charlie riding the room's lunges with your knees against the lockers, catching a tureen at the top of its leap like a shortstop. One plain tumbler dies that afternoon. Leapt its fiddle, burst on the deck lively as a grape. And Mr. Averill, wedged in his doorway with the cellar book under his arm, watches you sweep the corpse into a dustpan at a 30-degree roll, and issues the storm's only communique. 1. Aft in the saloon, meanwhile, the owner's party takes the gale as scenery. They gather at the streaming windows with tea. You serve tea, at a slant, in a gale, and this is the afternoon you finally can. And Miss Alice braces her Kodak against the mullion, trying to photograph a schooner burying her bows, and Mrs. Carrow says comfortably, from the deep chair by the unlit marble fireplace, "How wild it is," and she is not wrong. And 18 feet under her chair, 4 men are shoveling in 130 degrees to keep her teacup warm and her opinion possible. And somewhere aft, in the owner's dressing room, Mr. Pruitt is riding the same gale with a hot iron, pressing evening trousers to a knife crease on a bucking ship. And when you pass the doorway with your rescued tureen, he glances up and issues, unasked, one of his 40 sentences of the season. Weather is for the deck department's boy. In this room, it is always Tuesday. The squall blows through in 90 minutes, the way August squalls do. The fleet reforms. The evening anchorage gets its dinner party after all, and the story of the wave that came over the flagship's bow grows a foot taller at every table it visits, told by gentlemen all evening to ladies. The wave having been met, at the time, by no gentleman aboard, but by 2 oil-skinned Deer Isle seamen, whose names do not attend the dinner. Captain Loring you come to know a little on that cruise, as much as your stations allow, and he is worth knowing. Downy stock, Searsport born, 30 years in ships, master of the Ondine these 6 seasons. On his licence he could command an Atlantic liner, and the liner would pay him less, which is precisely why the great yachts get the pick of the coast shipmasters. He fights the squall with 4 quiet helm orders and a cup of coffee he never finishes, and afterward, making his round of the ship at evening, he makes one every evening, all the way forward, all the way down, the only man aboard whose feet know every deck including yours. He finds you restowing the pantry and stops in the doorway half a minute, watching you wedge the last rack. Nothing carried away aft? 1 tumbler, sir. A pause, his eyes going over the racks the way they go over rigging. Know why she's a dry ship in a seaway, boy? Because everything aboard has one place, and everything's in it. A thing in its place has no way to hurt you. He moves on, unhurried, certain the deck will hold, and you stand there among your wedged and numbered glasses, understanding that you have just been shown the whole ship's soul by the man who keeps it. The Ondine is not beautiful because she is rich, Danny. She is beautiful because she is right. Every object in its station, every man in his watch, and the family aft buys that rightness the way they buy the roses, without ever once learning its name. The name is seamanship. It lives below the waterline with everything else that works. It is also on the cruise, Shelter Island, the quiet Sunday anchorage, the guests all ashore at the Manhasset house for the afternoon, that the coin comes. You are turning mattresses in number 5, the bachelor guest stateroom, Mr. Terrett's. Sunlight in bars through the blinds, the ship drowsing, and your hand sliding under the mattress edge along the frame the way it has slid 100 times, stops against a small, hard, round, cold thing, and you know before you look. A $10 gold eagle, tucked 6 inches in from the head, where no coin arrives by accident, shining against the bed frame like a little set trap, which is what it is. And you stand there in the barred light with $10 in your palm, 12 days of you, your father's week and a half in the bay, the launch fare to shore and a train ticket home and change, and you would love to tell me the arithmetic never runs, that Charlie's sermon from July does all your thinking in one clean stroke. It runs, Danny. It runs for about 4 seconds, every future in it complete. That is what the trap is for. A test that tempts nobody tests nothing. Then you take the coin up with 2 fingers, exactly as prescribed, like a dead mouse, and you carry it straight down the alleyway to the pantry and put it on the counting shelf in front of Mr. Averill and say, "Where and when, mattress, stateroom 5, 6 inches from the head, 3:30. Mr. Averill looks at the coin, looks at you, 1 beat longer than the coin got, says nothing whatever, no praise. Praise would admit the trap existed, and opens the log he keeps of everything and writes 1 line. And the coin goes into an envelope, and the envelope goes into the silver safe, and that apparently is that. Except that at supper, Charlie, who has heard everything because Charlie hears everything, reaches across the mess table and cuffs you once on the back of the head, gently, the way you gentle a dog that came back off a bad scent, and says, "There's hope for the bay, man," and you find that this, absurdly, is worth more to you than the eagle. The envelope, though, keep your eye on the envelope in the safe. Envelopes in that safe do not sleep forever. The cruise ends where it began. The squadron stands up the bay to Newport in a 2-mile column, guns and burgees and excursion steamers alongside like gulls after a fishing fleet, and the Ondine drops her hook in her own berth off Goat Island on a golden evening, and August turns for home. Ashore, the casino has its tennis week. The cottages burn their candles by the gross. Nurmahal rides to her anchor like a state visit, and every single conversation you pour coffee over, every one, morning after morning, the same words rising off the ironed newspapers, like heat off the fiddly, is about one thing now. The English yacht has arrived. Valkyrie III, Lord Dunraven's challenger, crossed the ocean and is tuning off Sandy Hook. Defender is proving out her bronze and aluminum against the old Vigilant in trial after trial. The betting is general, ungentle, and quoted in the Herald like grain. On the 3rd of September, the club's committee boats go down to New York, and the Ondine follows on the 4th, and Monsieur Aubert begins provisioning for what he calls, with a Lyonnais gravity that admits no smiling, the campaign. You break out the private signal on the morning you sail for New York, and it snaps open over your head in a small north wind with the first real autumn in it, and you stand a second with the halyard in your fist looking up. 4 days to the first race. The loudest minute of your year is loading itself quietly, like the little brass gun, aft on its rail, under its cover, sure of its moment. Saturday, the 7th of September, 1895, off Sandy Hook, and you have never in your life seen so many human beings afloat at once, and neither has anybody else, because there have never been so many human beings afloat at once. The morning papers will argue afterward about the number, 30,000, 40, 60,000 souls on the water, but you don't need the papers. You have the deck rail and your own eyes at 7 in the morning, and what they give you is a city. An improvised, smoking, whistling, tilting city of hulls, laid out over miles of grey-green Atlantic off the Hook, excursion steamers in their dozens, chartered to the rails and past them, their upper decks packed so solid with humanity that they wear a visible list toward whichever side the racing yachts are rumoured to appear on. Tugs got up in bunting with brass bands on their bows already playing at 7. Ferry boats that have no business outside their rivers, wallowing along like hen coops gone to sea. Ocean liners paused with passengers black along their boat decks, the grey hulls of the Navy's patrol vessels trying, with steam whistles and semaphore and profanity relayed by megaphone, to keep a racer course open in the middle of a public carnival, and scattered through it all, riding like duchesses in the street crowd, the great yachts of the club fleet, Corsair, Nourmahal, the Ondine among her peers, everyone dressed, everyone crowded with guests in white, every galley below decks going like a foundry. Because, and this is your cup, Danny, this is the part no grandstand ever taught. The greatest sporting event of the age reaches you as a rhythm of trays. Mr. Stanhope's party for the first race is 22. Extra guests came aboard at the battery with their maids and their glasses and their opinions. And from 9:30, when the ship anchors on the fleet's edge north of the lightship, with the whole spectator city between you and the start line, Captain Loring, having read the crowd like weather, chooses the edge. You hear him tell the mate that today the danger isn't the sea, it's the company. From 9:30 your world is the pantry ladder, the afterdeck, and the 40 feet of promenade between them. Bouillon at 10. The race is called for 11. You see the start, or rather you see what a steward sees, which is a corner of it, over the shoulders of 22 guests and between two funnels of an intervening excursion boat. Two slivers of white, impossibly tall, impossibly close together, leaning into the northeast breeze as the gun smoke from the committee boat blows flat. Defender you know by the metal glint of her topsides when she heels, pale as a fish's flank. Valkyrie shows a blacker hull and a vast press of canvas the papers have been calling the biggest single suit of sails ever crossed on a racing cutter. For one clean half-minute the whole city of boats goes almost quiet. Thousands upon thousands of people holding one breath, and the two towers of cloth slide away toward the sea line, and then the whistles begin and do not meaningfully stop for 5 hours. Luncheon is served to the boom of bands and steam horns. 22 covers under the awning, Aubert's campaign spread, the turtle soup, a striped base poached whole, champagne going off along the sideboard in polite volleys, and you serve it blind, backward to the ocean, reading the race in the guests' faces the way the deaf read talk. A rumble of disappointment travels the fleet at 2. The wind has gone soft. The leaders are far down toward the mark. The excursion city is bored and says so with its whistles. Then toward 3 the sound changes colour, comes up the miles of water like a tide made of throats, swelling boat by boat as the news outruns the yachts themselves, Defender leading home. And when she crosses at last, a white sliver under a mountain of canvas, small as a moth at this distance, the gun from the committee boat arriving 2 full seconds after its smoke. The spectator city simply detonates. Every whistle, every siren, every bell, every band, every throat. 40,000 people and 500 boilers screaming together. A sound with weight to it. A sound you feel through the deck, teak like the ship itself cheering, and the Ondine's part in that thunder is precisely yours. Mr. Kerrigan. Averill at your shoulder, having promoted you 1 rank for the sentence, handing you the moment as formally as a dish. The owner's compliments to the gun, and you cross to the little brass swivel whose whole life has been salutes, and you fire it once. Your palm on the lanyard, into the roar of the age, and up the signal halyards on your own. Hoist goes the string of gay small flags, spelling, to any glass that reads them, well done. The loudest minute of your year, as promised, and your 2 hands inside it. Defender wins the first race on corrected time by 8 minutes and 49 seconds. You will remember the number all your life and never once need it. What you'll need is the lanyard in your fist and the smoke walking away downwind through the whistles. The 10th of September is a different day, and it teaches you the other thing crowds are for. Tuesday, the second race, the breeze brisker, the spectator city thicker and pushier. The patrol boats have been losing their war for 3 days, and steamers full of ticket holders crowd the starting area the way carriages crowd a theatre door, and Lord Dunraven has already been complaining with reason in that cold, correct, furious English way that his racecourse keeps having several thousand tons of sightseer parked on it. And in the 10 minutes before the start, in the jockeying, right there, in the crowded water your own captain refused to anchor in, it happens. You're at the rail with a tray of cups, in the gap between servings, glasses all along the rail beside you at 22 pairs of eyes, when the two racers converge on the line, close-hauled, converging closer, the excursion boats hemming the water on both sides. And then a groan goes up from the nearest steamers, a sound like a fence going over, and Mr. Terrett, glued to his binocular, says the words that will be in 40 newspapers by morning. They've touched. By God, they've touched. Valkyrie's boom end, swinging as she bore up across Defender's bow in the crowded water, has hooked Defender's topmast shroud and swept down the wire. You learn the anatomy at dinner service, where it is discussed for 4 hours, and Defender's topmast stands wounded, her upper rigging crippled at the gun, and a protest flag is up her leach before the smoke clears, and the race sails anyway, wounded boat and whole boat, out and back through 5 hours while 22 guests conduct 22 inquests over your poured coffee, and Valkyrie finishes first by 47 seconds, and the fleet does not know what noise to make and makes all of them at once, and that evening ashore and afloat the committee sits, and the next morning's ruling runs through the anchored fleet faster than steam. Foul confirmed. Race 2 awarded to Defender. Protest sustained. The Englishman's wind struck off, and Danny, standing at the sideboard through the longest dinner of your season, decanting for men who have money on this and lineage in it, you now hear the word that will hang over everything that follows, spoken at the Stanhope table in every intonation English affords, unsporting. Some mean Dunraven for fouling and sailing on. Some mean the committee. Some mean the excursion boats. The mob. The whole screaming carnival that packed a gentleman's racecourse until the gentleman ran out of water. Mr. Stanhope himself says almost nothing, all evening, which you have learned is his way of saying the most. At the cheese he delivers his entire verdict to the cloth. A crowded course is nobody's course. He is quoting no one. He will turn out by Thursday to have been prophetic. Because Thursday, the 12th of September, is the strangest sporting event you will ever witness, and you witness it from the deck's edge with a coffee pot in your hand, which is somehow exactly right. The fleet assembles again, thinner now, chastened, the patrol boats grim, and the 2 yachts come to the line at the gun, and Valkyrie III, the challenger from England, the mountain of canvas, crosses the starting line, turns, and hauls down her racing colours. Withdraws, quits the series. On the line, in front of the assembled thousands, Dunraven's protest against the crowding and the committee having been made and refused, and the mountain of sail simply turns for home like a man leaving a dinner party in the soup course, and Defender is left alone on the course with the cup at stake, and the rules are the rules. She must sail it, so she sails it, alone. Around the whole triangle, hours, one white yacht racing nobody under a grey sky that has been lowering since noon. the spectator city watching in a silence that starts embarrassed and turns, mile by mile, into something more like a funeral's dignity. Whistles stilled, bands put away. 40,000 people watching the greatest boat of the age win the America's Cup uncontested, unaccompanied and unconsoled. Along the Ondine's rail the guests stand quiet in their whites like people at a graveside, and it is Miss Alice who breaks your ship's silence, lowering her glasses, saying to no one in particular, in a voice with real loss in it, "But it's so sad. Somebody tell me why it isn't sad." Nobody tells her. And Mr. Stanhope, third time you have watched him do this, reducing a season to a sentence, says quietly to the captain beside him, "Dip her our colours as she comes home, Loring. Somebody ought to." And the order comes to you, of course, because the halyards are yours. And so at the finish of the strangest race in the Cup's history, as Defender crosses her lonely line to a gun and a ragged, half-hearted, ashamed sort of cheer, the steam yacht Ondine's ensign comes down slow and rises again in salute, your two hands on the halyard doing the one graceful thing your betters could think of, a servant's gesture, fittingly, honour performed by the invisible on behalf of the scene, and in that exact grey minute, while the ensign is still travelling, you hear, close, off your left shoulder, where no guest should be, in crew country by the flag locker, a small, neat mechanical click, and you turn, ensign halyard still in your fist, and there is Miss Alice Stanhope with the kodak at her waist, caught, unrepentant, 19 years old, and she looks at you, the way the rail of this ship has never once looked at you all season, and says, "Well, somebody ought to remember the man who did it," and is gone aft before you can decide whether stewards are permitted to have heard. The clicker pointed the wrong way down the social scale for the only time all summer. Remember it in October. It comes back to you, that click, in an envelope, with consequences no bigger than a playing card and heavier than the gun. The scold, for completeness, because the ship keeps her promises too. It happened that same Thursday, in the noon rush before the non-race, the pantry urn's mended gasket letting go against the back of your right hand as you wrestled it. A hand's breadth of skin gone tight and white and screaming while 22 lunches hung in the air. Charlie took your trays without a word being necessary, and between the withdrawal and the lonely finish, you went down the fiddly ladders into the 120 degrees, cradling your hand, and Janos Berich turned from his fire, saw, nodded once as if a delivery long expected had arrived. She bites everybody once, and took down the dented tin with the Magyar word on the lid, and dressed your burn with his wife's tallow and marigold by the light of his furnace, there below the waterline, while 4 decks up the flower of 2 empires sorted out the ownership of a silver cup. His hands doing it were exactly as gentle as his firing. "Now you're a crew," he said, and clanged his door shut and sent you back up toward the grey daylight mended. Of everything the 12th of September 1895 is remembered for, and it is remembered for plenty. That is the part this story was built to keep. That night the fleet lies quiet off the hook, and the city of boats dissolves toward its piers, whistling no more, and the cup, the actual 100-guinea mug which has sat bolted in its case ashore through all of this, stays where it has stayed since 1851, in America, defended, if that is the word this week, and nobody aboard from owner to coal passer is entirely sure it is. You stand your anchor watch turn at the gangway from 8 to 10 with your dressed hand throbbing in its bandage like a second heart, and the harbour lights of the Jersey shore lie along the water, and somewhere in the dark to seaward the 2 greatest racing yachts ever built to that hour swing to their moorings, one of them already being called. In tomorrow's headlines, Charlie will read aloud to the mess. Names that have nothing to do with sport. It is over. All of it is over, in fact. The race. The argument's first act. And, though the afterdeck doesn't say it yet, and the glory hole said it a week ago, the season itself. Autumn came aboard sometime in the last 3 days, the way it always does on this coast, without a gun, without a flag, on the north wind, and the Ondine swinging to her anchor in the dark is already pointing home. The run back east is the gentlest passage of the season, and the ship seems to know it. A whole day up the Sound at an unhurried 10 knots, sea-like poured pewter. The first geese of the year going over high and southbound in their long wavering check marks, and the owner's party subdued and pleasant in the way people are after a great event has finished and taken its noise with it. The awnings come in for good somewhere off Faulkner's Island. Too much north in the air now for breakfast on deck, and meals move inside to the mahogany and the stained glass light, and the marble fireplace, laid ready since July, is lit at last on the first raw evening, and you kneel and tend a coal fire in a marble hearth on a moving ship, while rain ticks on the skylight, and Mrs. Stanhope, passing behind you, surveys the hearth precisely as she surveyed the whole regiment of the ship in July, and issues the only verdict of hers you will ever personally receive, very tolerable, which Mr. Averill, when you report it in the pantry, repeats once flatly, the way other men frame citations, and you would defy any man alive to do that particular chore in that particular company, and not feel the strangeness and the privilege of the century he has been issued. Newport again for the last fortnight of September, but a Newport with its lid coming off. The anchorage empties by the day, a yacht gone every morning like teeth from a comb, and the cottages along the cliff go dark window by window as the vans take the season's wardrobe back to New York, and the shoreboats boys turn surly with the shrinking trade. The talk at table is all endings now. Who sails Saturday? Who is wintering abroad? And, filling every silence like weather, the great engagement, because the papers have it at last and print little else. Miss Consuelo Vanderbilt of Marble House, your own harbour's Marble House, is to marry the Duke of Marlborough in New York in November. Mrs. Carrow reads the reports aloud at breakfast with the expression of a woman auditing an invoice, and the pantry has its own opinion, which Nellie delivers at the servants' table, with the furled laugh entirely unfurled. They're after weighing the poor girl out in railroad shares and calling it a romance. I've carried better romances up the back stairs on a tea tray. The mess laughs, and then doesn't. Quite. Even below the waterline, everyone understands the girl in the marble house is another kind of cargo. It is that sort of coast. It is that sort of year. The guests go in ones and twos through late September, each departure a small ceremony of trunks and envelopes, and the envelopes matter to you now, because this is when you learn how the season pays its invisible men. Tips on a great yacht are never handed to you. That would require seeing you. They are left with the chief steward, in sums scaled to the giver's standing and conscience, and divided by Mr. Averill at the season's end according to a justice as private and absolute as everything else in his kingdom. Mr. Terrett of the Gold Eagle and Stateroom 5 leaves. Charlie reports from reliable pantry intelligence, notably well. Mrs. Carrow leaves precisely correctly. And on the last morning, at the gangway, waiting for the launch with her mistress's jewel case in her 2-gloved hands, Nellie Doyle looks at you over the top of it and does not unfurl the laugh at all, which is how you know this one is real. "Well, Bayman," she says, It was a summer, and you say it was, because it was, and there is nothing else either of your stations permits, and the launch takes her, sitting straight backed among the hat boxes, and you stand at the rail with your bandaged hand and watch the water widen, and Charlie appears beside you and mercifully says nothing at all, not even the terrible things for your own good. Servant seasons, Danny, shorter and honester, like he told you. Somewhere in a Fifth Avenue basement this winter, there is a supper table that will be better off for her laugh, and that is all you will ever know about it. And that is the shape of below-stairs friendship, complete as an egg and gone like one too. The family goes last, on the 1st of October, and the going of the family is the true end of a yacht's year. The last dinner aboard is quiet and nearly perfect. Aubert at his heights, 12 covers, the good baccarat out for the final time. And at the end of it, Mr. Stanhope does the thing that owners of the great yachts documentedly did at season's end. The one night the two worlds are permitted to see each other. The crew is mustered aft, all 58 of you, black gang scrubbed pink for it, and the owner stands at the break of the deck with his cigar and says his 40 or so words. Good season. Smart ship. Credit to her captain and every man aboard. The cup, a small dry smile. The cup we will not discuss, except to note that this vessel dipped her colours correctly when nobody else on the ground thought of it. And here his eyes find you, Danny, in the back rank of the stewards, find you and hold you for exactly 1 second. The man for whom you have poured perhaps 400 cups of coffee, who has never once looked at you before because the whole architecture of his world is engineered so that he should never have to, and he says to the space just above your head but unmistakably about you, some hands aboard understand that how a thing is done is what the thing is. Those hands will always eat. Then wages are announced supplemented, a month's extra pay for every man, the season having pleased him, and the muster breaks up into the nearest thing to a cheer this disciplined ship allows, and that sentence thrown to you like a coin off a bridge by a man who will have forgotten your existence by Tuesday is somehow the one you will quote to your grandchildren, who will think you made it up. The morning they leave, Mrs. Stanhope goes down the ship one final time ahead of the trunks, unhurried, colonel to the last, and finds nothing to correct, which from her is a 21-gun salute. And Mr. Pruitt, dressing case in hand as ever, pauses at the gangway where you stand at attention with the man-rope, and looks at you for the length of 2 full seconds, a fortune by his rates, and spends his final sentence of the season. 19 years, boy, and I will tell you the whole trade. Watch the hands, never the face. The face is dressed by us. The hands they do themselves. Then he is down into the launch after his master, upright as an umbrella, and you will value that sentence for 50 years and never once, pouring or carrying or watching a room, find it wrong. And then they are gone down the ladder for the last time, and the private signal comes down with them. Your hands, your halyard, the little blue and white sentence hauled down and folded and boxed for the winter. And the Ondine, for the first time since April, belongs entirely to the people who work her. What follows, nobody ashore ever thinks to imagine, and it is one of the best kept and gentlest of the season's secrets. A great yacht dying for the winter takes weeks, and the dying is beautiful. She steams for the yard, City Island, up the Sound, where the Yacht Basin's winter congregation is already gathering, bare poles by the dozen, and day by day the ship is put to sleep from the outside in. The flowers simply stop. The last vases go over the side off Execution Rocks, one final drowned garden down the tide, and the boatswain's mate watches it go with that same unreadable face. And this time you stand beside him and find you have learned, sometime in the last 6 months, to read it after all. It says, "Too beautiful to keep, too costly to mourn," over the side with it, "same as the season, same as us." The baccarat is washed a last time. You wash it, all 48, and we will come back to 48, and packed in straw in numbered cases for the townhouse. The silver goes ashore in its felt like a payroll under guard. The piano is swaddled in 3 blankets and cased. The carpets come up, the mahogany is oiled and sheeted, the staterooms stripped to their springs, camphor sown through the ship like salt through a field, every porthole blinded with its deadlight, until the palace part of her is all ghosts. Furniture shapes under grey canvas in rooms that smell of camphor and cold brass, the marble bath dry and papered, the gold taps bagged in flannel, and your footsteps, which this ship trained to silence, suddenly loud as a stranger's in saloons with nothing left to overhear. Last of all, on a sharp blue morning in the yard with the tide gone slack, the engineers let the fires die. Think what that means after this story. Since March, since before you signed aboard, there has been live steam somewhere in her. Through every illumination, every gale, every anchor watch, the low breath under the teak that you stopped hearing weeks in. And now the black gang lets the fires burn down and draws them, rakes the last living coals out of her furnaces into buckets, and the breath stops. You're on deck when the funnel's faint heat shimmer gives out. The ship goes still in a way she has never once been still all season. Not quiet still, dead keel still, a building now, a warehouse of sheeted ghosts, and Janos Beric comes up the fiddly ladder for the last time, with his kit bag on his shoulder and his shore coat on, scrubbed, collar buttoned, transformed, the scars on his hands the only part of the stokehole that comes up the ladder with him. The black gang pays off first and scatters fastest. Firemen are wanted men, winter berths in steamers, no sentiment. But he crosses the deck to you at the gangway, and he puts in your good hand, your right one is still faintly glazed with its healing, the dented tin with the Magyar word scratched on the lid. Not lens. Huts. "Wife makes more," he says, shouldering past your protest the way he shoulders everything. Your deck now, or pantry, or who knows what you will be, but you got bit and you came below, and not every white jacket comes below. He's down the ladder before you own a sentence. From the wall of the basin he looks back up once at the whole sheeted length of her, funnel to figurehead, and calls the last word this story has from the fire room, and it is a benediction, and you know it. Good kettle. And is gone. Into Pennsylvania, into the winter, into the enormous unrecorded country where all the hidden halves of that age went when the season ended. Paying off comes the next forenoon, alphabetical at a table on the after deck, the same teak you wholly stoned in the Newport fog a lifetime of mornings ago. Captain Loring seated with the articles and the money in front of him, Mr. Averill standing at his shoulder with his own book, Kerrigan, Daniel, Steward. Your season's wages, the owner's extra month and then Averill's division of the envelope money, the tips, announced without explanation because his justice explains nothing. Yours is larger than a last and least steward's share has any arithmetical right to be. And when your eyes come up in surprise, the chief steward is already looking at you, and what happens then happens in front of no witnesses but the captain, which is to say in the deepest privacy this ship contains. He opens the silver safe envelope, that envelope, Shelter Island, Stateroom 5, and lays the gold eagle on the table on top of your wages. Mr. Terrett's instruction, on leaving, he says, dry as ever, was that if the coin came to my counting shelf within the day, it should come back to the finder at paying off. It came within the hour. A pause, the pause of a man deciding whether to spend a second sentence, and he spends it. In 31 years I have banked 9 of these for other men's boys. I am not often asked to give one back. And then, you are already past speech, and he is not finished. He reaches into his own black coat and sets beside the eagle, in a nest of tissue paper, a champagne glass. Baccarat, the Stanhope cipher, a hairline crack walking down from the lip, fine as a hair from your own head. Number 48. The set was inventoried in March, Mr. Averill says to the middle distance, as though reading minutes of a meeting. The floor is in the March book in my ink. A guest's doing last October, and the replacement has been on order from France since the spring. His eyes come to you at last, and in them, for the second and final time this season, is the thing that is almost warmth. You stood your first banquet service in July, Kerrigan, with your eye going to that rack all evening like a man with a pebble in his boot. You hid it well. You hid it, in fact, precisely where I had already hidden it. He nudges the tissue an inch toward you. Keep it, the nudge says. You feared the wrong thing, boy. Breakage is money, and money is nothing. This ship burns your year's wages in a fortnight and calls it July. What I required of you was that when you found a flaw in your charge, you would not pass it silently down the rack for the next man to answer for. You did exactly that. The dry voice does not soften so much as slow. So did I, at 19, on the Cunard boat, with a chipped decanter I dream about to this day. It is the apprentice's sin. You have now committed it, survived it, and been shown it. Commit it again, and I will put you ashore myself. A breath. I expect you back aboard in April, second steward. Vec goes to a hotel in the city. He has given his notice and his reasons, and they are good ones. You will do. And that you will do, from the man trained where the coffee never once arrived cold, is the highest decoration the season has to give, and you take your wages and your eagle and your cracked glass and your salve tin down the gangway with your sea bag, 20 years old since Tuesday, and stand on the solid, unmoving stone of the basin wall, with your whole strange treasury in a canvas bag, rich by the standards of everyone you were born among, invisible by the standards of everyone you served, and unsure for a long moment there on the wall which world you're now standing in, or ever will be again. Charlie Vec walks with you to the City Island horse car, because of course he does. Sea bag on his shoulder, bound for a Manhattan hotel pantry, and he has decided a Manhattan life. Floors don't roll, Danny, and hotels have girls in them who stay past October. And at the car stop, as his goodbye, he does the most Charlie thing available, hands you his last Herald, folded as ever to the yachting column. Keep the habit, he says. The column's where our trade prints its weather. And the habit kept is how the rest of this story reaches you, through that autumn and winter, a column at a time, at your father's kitchen table in Greenport with the bay wind worrying the windows. Because the cup was not finished making noise, it had only paused to reload. In November, you read it standing up, the paper tilted to the lamp, your mother asking twice what ailed you. Lord Dunraven put his name to the accusation he had only muttered in September. That Defender, between the measurement and the first race, had secretly taken aboard extra ballast and sailed the opening course a heavier, longer, faster boat than the one that had been measured. In plain kitchen English, that the Americans had cheated him. Printed, signed, public. The roar that went up out of the sporting press of two nations made September's whistles sound like a tea bell. Through Christmas week and into the new year, the New York Yacht Club convened its inquiry. Grave famous men at a green table hearing testimony under oath, crews questioned, logs produced, the measurer recalled, naval authority itself brought to sit in judgment. And in the end the finding came flat and unanimous. The charge was baseless. The ballast had never varied. The accusation was, in the committee's word, unsupported. And Lord Dunraven, given every opportunity to withdraw it, withdrew nothing. So in February of 1896 the club voted him out. Struck the Earl from its rolls, the honorary membership he had held rescinded. The same club you could not help remembering over the kitchen oilcloth that had once shut its wooden door on Jay Gould and all his millions. The door again, Danny. Even for earls, Charlie was righter than he knew. You can buy the water and you can buy the boat, but the club is the club, and its one unforgivable cargo, richer than coal, heavier than gold, is the word cheat said out loud and not taken back. And the boats themselves, since a bedtime story owes you its fates, and these are real ones, out of the record. Defender, the bronze and aluminum wonder, never defended again. Her strange metals quarrelled with each other in the seawater. The chemist had warned it. Galvanic action, eating her fastenings from within even as she won. And she was laid up, brought out once more only to help tune her successor, and broken up for scrap in 1901, 6 years old, the fastest disposable object her century made. Valkyrie III went home to Scotland and never raced again either, and Dunraven never challenged more. It took a gentler Irishman, a grocer's knight named Lipton, to make the cup a friendly war again at the century's turn, 5 challenges worth, losing every time with a grace that won him more than the mug would have. The cup itself sat on, bolted down, defended, American, as it would sit for another 8 decades and more, the longest winning streak in the history of organised sport, until boats with wings out of a country called Australia took it away at last in a September none of you aboard the Ondine could have dreamed. And Corsair, black bark-rigged banker's hours Corsair, near enough your own ship's twin. Hear this, because it is the strangest true ending on that anchorage. 3 years after your season, in the spring of 1898, the war with Spain came, and the Navy went shopping among the pleasure fleet, and Mr. Morgan's yacht was bought, armed, painted grey, and commissioned as the gunboat USS Gloucester. And on the 3rd of July, 1898, off Santiago de Cuba, the erstwhile flagship of Wall Street steamed straight in under the Spanish shore batteries and shot 2 enemy destroyers to pieces, the marble bathroom class of vessel gone to war and covering itself in what the dispatches called, without any irony at all, glory. You do not yet know this, that October, at the oilcloth table. None of them know it, the owners or the stewards or the scarred firemen of that gleaming anchorage, that inside 3 years the Navy will come for the yachts themselves, and the swans will go in grey paint, and some of the very teak that was holystoned for Millionaire's bare feet will take Spanish shell fire off a Cuban beach. History does that to luxury, Danny, every single time. It is only ever borrowing the shine. Nothing with a waterline stays hidden forever. The Kodak keeps its promise the gentlest way. A week into October, an envelope reaches Greenport addressed in a hand you don't know, forwarded through the yard office, no letter inside. Of course no letter. There is no correct letter from that end of the ship to yours, and she knew it. Just a photograph. Small, grey, sharp. A young man at a rail in a white jacket, caught from the side, both hands on a halyard, ensign half lowered above him, the whole blurred spectator fleet beyond, and on the back in pencil 5 words. The man who did it. Your mother finds you looking at it and asks if that is you, and you say it is, and she asks who took it, and you say, truthfully, someone from the other side of the waterline, and she lets it be, and the photograph goes into the cigar box with the eagle and the tin, and, wrapped in its tissue, the cracked 48th glass, the entire visible estate, one box, of a season that burned $200,000, and you would not trade the box for the season's coal bill, and you would have some trouble explaining why, and you will never once need to explain it to anyone who has held a tray. In December, before the bay froze the ferries into their slips, you went up once to City Island to see her. You told your father it was about the spring birth, and it half was. The basin lay grey and still, bare poles in ranks against a snow sky, and the Ondine rode at her winter mooring among her sheeted sisters, deadlights blinded, funnel-capped, bright-work bagged, a long white ghost with a caretaker's stovepipe smoking thinly somewhere forward. One old ship keeper and his dog where 58 men had lived. The keeper knew your name. Avril had left it with him, which told you the April promise was real and entered in a book somewhere, because everything Avril meant was entered in a book somewhere. He let you walk her deck once, fore and aft. Your shoes rang on the frozen teak like a stranger's, like anybody's. Under the snowlight the deck was grey, not cream. Nobody's knees had been at it since October, and standing at the flag locker, locked, empty, its halyards frapped and bare, you understood, with the clean completeness of a thing finished, that everything you had spent the season making had already, correctly, vanished. The whitened deck, the blazing brass, the risen flags, the poured coffee, the invisible perfection of 400 mornings' work, all of it made to be consumed by the day it was made in, like Aubert's dinners, like the drowned roses, like Janos's coal. That is what the hidden half of luxury is, in the end. Not a scandal, not a secret, just this. Labour that eats itself daily so that ease can look eternal. The pyramids kept their stones. Your cathedral was rebuilt from nothing every single dawn and gone by dark, and no one who worshipped in it ever knew it had builders at all. And of the builders, the real ones, the thousands of them on the real Corsairs and Nourmahals and Atalantas, the stewards and stokers and laundrymen whose composite ghosts you have worn all night. The record keeps almost nothing, and I will not insult them by inventing what it lost. Whoever they severally were, the crew lists hold their names, the wage books hold their numbers, and the sea and the century closed over the rest. Where the paying off money went, whom they married, which ones made chief steward, and which ones broke, what they told their grandchildren, whether anyone believed the part about the gold bathroom taps. The tide took it, the way it took the roses every morning, but every documented interior that survives, every inventory of marble and mahogany, every photograph of a spotless deck, every menu, every ironed newspaper, is also read from underneath their monument, because not one object in a single frame of it got clean or hot or cold or polished or carried by itself. You have spent one night reading the age from underneath. That is the whole trick of this channel, and the whole of what I have for you, and it is nearly time to put it down. So come back one last time to the bunk in the glory hole 11 feet by 9, some warm night in the deep of that summer with the seasons still whole around you, because that is where we will leave him, and where I will leave you. The ship at anchor, breathing. The tide clucking along the plates an inch from your ear, the most private sound in the world, a sound no guest ever heard. Charlie turned to the bulkhead, breathing slow, your hands aching in the good way, the way that means the work is behind you and not ahead. Through the deck, very faint, the piano and a woman singing something slow, and you cannot hear the words and do not need them. Your eyes are closing. Let them. You are 20 years old, or 19, or whatever age you are tonight, listening. You have carried what the day asked you to carry. You have polished what was yours to polish, and found what was yours to find, and turned in the coin, and kept the tin, and stood your watch. Nobody saw you do it, and it was done, and the doing was real whether it was seen or not, and there is a deep, deep rest in that. Older than yachts, older than money, the rest of the hidden half, the sleep of the people who did the work. It is the soundest sleep there is. It is yours tonight. You're warm enough, there in the narrow bunk, fed enough, safe enough. You have a bed and a blanket, and tomorrow's work waiting for you like a boat tied to its post. That's more than the boy in the fog had any promise of in April. That's enough. It was always going to be enough. Tomorrow there will be teak, pale under the stone in the dark before the light. Tomorrow there will be brass, and the flags at 8, and coffee, poured behind shoulders that never turn. Tomorrow there will be flowers coming off in the launch, and the drowned garden going down the tide, and the fires fed little and often and level under it all. But that's tomorrow. Tonight the ship rides easy, and the watch is set, and none of it, not one gleaming inch of it, is yours to hold up while you sleep. Somebody else has the deck. Let them have it. The same as last night. The same as every night at that mooring, all that gilded summer. The same as all the summers stretching away down that coast, before him and after him, wherever a hull swings to its anchor in the dark and a tired crew sleeps forward. Centuries will pass. They have passed. You're lying in one of them now, listening. The harbour he knew will change beyond recognition. The great steam yachts will vanish almost entirely, sold, scrapped, painted grey, and marched to war, until a whole class of ships survives mainly as photographs of saloons with nobody in them. The cottages will outlive their families and become museums, and strangers in summer crowds will file through Marble House at $1 a head and be shown the gold room, and no tour in the world will show them the bellboard in the basement, though it is still there, every room's little numbered flag still waiting. The cup will go on being raced for in boats Herreshoff himself could not have dreamed, by crews who are, at last, the famous ones. But people will still shine what they own for other people to see. Still keep the effort out of sight and call the result effortless. Still build their lives above a waterline and hope nobody looks below it. Some things don't change. The waterline doesn't change. Only now you know where it runs, and knowing is the one luxury nobody had to carry up a ladder for you. And whoever you are listening to this in the dark, whatever tray you carried today, whatever deck you scrubbed, whatever work you did that was consumed by the day it was done in and thanked by no one, the boy in the bunk is your people, and his rest is your rest, and you have as much right to it as any owner ever had to his gimbaled bed. More, maybe. You paddled. Swans sleep sound, but the paddlers sleep sounder. So let it come now. Let sleep take you the way the tide took the roses, easy, without argument, out on the long ebb. Let the harbour sounds fade, the bellboy, the far waltz, the clucking tide. Let the lights of the anchored fleet go out one by one down the water, earliest bedtimes first, until there are only riding lights, and then only stars, and then only the warm dark behind your own eyes. Let your hands uncurl. They're done for the day. Let your thoughts slow and soften and settle like sediment in still water, and finally stop. The fires are banked. The watch is set. The flags are down and folded. Everyone in its locker, every glass in its rack, every fork in its chart, everything aboard in its one place, and a thing in its place has no way to hurt you. You've earned this rest. You earned it on your knees in the fog at 4:30, whether anyone saw or not. I saw. It's in the book, in good ink. Take it. And dream, if you can choose your dreams, of the night the whole fleet lit at once, the lanterns climbing the masts, the water doubling every flame, the rockets bursting twice, once in the sky and once in the sea, and of the boy at the masthead with wire in his teeth, 90 feet over all of it, barely a cog but there. Both true forever, and both, by now, fast asleep. Good night.